Kevin Hunter with Dave Ford on the Business Forum Show, and we're going to have a little conversation about challenges that business people have finding good people for their team. And there's a lot of different reasons why this occurs, Dave. I'll share a couple of mine, and you can feel free to chip in here. One of them, I think, is that business people focus on what I call the mini-me. And because they don't find people like themselves out there, and they actually think that's a strategy and that's a healthy thing for the organization, but they don't find these mini-me's, and they'll come out and say, I can't find a good person. I can't find a good person who's willing to work, 18 hours a day like I do, and 7 days a week, and I can trust with absolutely so they probably have some really unrealistic expectations, for one, but there's also some fault in trying to bring somebody on board just like yourself, because if they are like you, they aren't going to be able to make up for any of your deficiencies. The other one is really the strategy or the process that people bring people on board. You aren't going to find anything new, and you aren't going to dabble into any new pools of employees if you always go about it the same. And some people are, whether it's throwing in the newspaper and thinking people are maybe reading that or whatever, but many, many times people will go back to what they think of the tried and true ways of getting a hold of people, and the methods of reaching people today are changing all the time. They're going to have to change things to find new people for the team.
Yeah, well, I mean, everything about employment has changed, over the past 10 years. And if you've been in business for 20 years and you're still trying to hire people the same way that you did, 10, 15 years ago now, it's not going to work. Just because the environment around it has changed. There's a lot of people out there right now. I mean, I hear this all the time. Well, why should I come to work? I can make, 80% of that and sit at home all day and do nothing for the next 10 months. Because they're collecting unemployment and the government's giving them unemployment. And the only reason they come back to work is to extend their unemployment. They come back to work, and that's part of the problem. They've figured this piece out, where if I simply work for I'll get a job and I'll behave for 6 months, 9 months, a year, and then I won't, they'll fire me and I'll be on unemployment for another year or 2 years.
Right.
And life's pretty good when you don't have to get up and go to work every day. And there is a decent segment of our population now, because the government basically made it possible for just about everybody to collect unemployment when the economy crashed. And they haven't really changed it any. It's too easy to collect unemployment. So first, you're starting there.
Right.
You've got, if you're interviewing people, 25% of the people that you interview are going to fall into that group. At least 25% are going to fall into that group. That all they're looking for is they're either coming in just for an interview to keep getting their unemployment, or they're looking for a short-term fix because their unemployment is going to run out, and they need to get a job for a few months so they can get fired again and collect unemployment.
Sounds so inspiring.
It does, but unfortunately, there is a good segment of the population that's the reality. 10 years ago, you were lucky if you collected unemployment for a few months, and then that was it, and you were done, and you had to go get a job, and you had to keep that job. Now, people, too much of the population isn't worried about keeping their job. They're not worried about getting fired, because they'll collect unemployment, and they will for a lengthy period of time. So there's that piece to begin with. You're absolutely right with the whole hiring mini-me's. That's not what you're looking for. You're looking for somebody that is their strengths or your weaknesses, which means if they're not you, you need to find somebody who is what you're looking for, that you know already, and find out what would motivate them. I mean, the number of times somebody would write an ad that would appeal to them, that's most of the time. You're writing an ad that appeals to you, but you're trying to hire somebody that's the exact opposite. So do you think that ad's going to appeal to them?
Probably not.
Probably not. So I'll do that a lot. If I've got somebody that's hiring somebody that's looking for a particular personality that they're going to hire, I'll tap into somebody that I already know that's very similar to that personality and have them write me an ad that would work for them. What do you know? You get a lot better turnout that way of people that are a right personality fit for what you're looking for to begin with.
Now, what about the actual hiring process? Because we're, of course, visiting about the traditional method of the boss or somebody in, the boss, whether they got a head of HR or whoever. But a lot of organizations either still are today or had been stuck in this traditional rut where it was always one person doing the hiring for the organization.
Yep.
And, I know you've had some experience with some organizations hiring by committee. And one of the things I really like about that is if there is more than one mind, and you take whether it's 5, 6 people, whatever, but if these people are all genuinely involved in that hiring process, so they're part of putting together the ad, they're part of screening them, you're going to get a very different group of people, for one, as a result of it. And you're very likely to choose different kinds of people because of that, too.
Correct. Yeah, typically clients that I work with, we've got a hiring process that we teach them that they go through where they end up doing at the end of it a group interview, and they'll typically have anywhere from half a dozen to 12 to 15 people in this group interview that they're interviewing all at the same time. And they'll have typically 3 or 4 people from their business. They'll have themselves, maybe their business partner. They'll have this particular person's direct report, manager, whatever. They'll have 3 or 4 people from their company in this group interview.
Sure. And
going through the questioning process with these people all at the same time. What ends up happening out of the group interview, they spend, 2 hours interviewing 12, 15 people, right? Now, if you're doing individual interviews, can you do that?
Not
in
at all.
2 hours? No.
Yeah, not at all.
No, they'll do a dozen people easily in 2 hours. And at the end of that 2 hours, they're going, okay, these are the 2 people we want to hire. And they'll have a consensus. Oh, that's it. Done. That's it. Call them back. Get them in here for a quick little half an hour individual interview and offer them the job. We're done. Whereas normally, how the old process went is you'd interview a dozen people. You'd do it over a week and a half, an hour time frame each. And it's likely that the person that was the best fit for the interview or for the job might have been the first person you interviewed. Now there's 2 problems. It was you interviewed him a week and a half ago, so you don't really remember everything that you really liked about him. So you may or may not offer them the job because you don't really remember. And 2, it's been a week and a half, they got another job because they were the best person for the interview.
Right.
So that process, was too long, too involved. And it took up too much time on your end. And that's if you're already working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, you don't have time, go through your interviewing process and spend a couple hours doing it. And, I've had clients that did that, and people that they wanted to hire more than, they could only hire one person, but there were a couple they really liked. They hired the one person. 4 months later, they called up one of the other people and hired them.
You know what, Dave, this will make you laugh, but a business owner recently told me that they needed somebody for their office, so they put an ad out. They got swamped with 44 responses, didn't have time to look at any of them, so they just hired somebody they knew could do the job.
Of course, that happens all the time. Yeah.
Kevin Hunter with Dave Ford here on the Business Forum Show. Thanks for listening.